Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for December 3rd, 2023. Nearly every week, I take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state. As always, you can find the links at freestatecolorado.com, and you can also find some original articles, interviews, and more. Just recently, I did a video with Natalie Menton on November 21st, recapping the special session. We literally go through every bill that was presented during the 2023 special session, talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, what passed and what failed. Check that out if you want to become an insider in legislative politics here in Colorado. Also, on November 22nd, I published an interview with Aaron Lee. You have to hear the story. Absolutely frightening what's going on in Colorado schools. If you have school-age children or family members that do, you need to watch this video, see what's going on in our Colorado schools. So check that out. You can also listen to it on Podbean. And then just this last week on December 1st, another video with Natalie Menton. The special session failed. Now what? So we go through and talk about Governor Polis's call for local governments to reduce property taxes, which I'll get into later in this video. But also, what's next? What's next for Colorado property taxes? What can be done to lower them? And what does the future hold for this Colorado political scheme related to property taxes, TABOR, and everything else? So check that out. Natalie Menton's a great resource. Always provides a lot of information you're not going to hear anywhere else. Well, pour yourself a cup of coffee if you're watching this in the morning, and let's take a look at some of the headlines this week. First story I'd like to cover is from KUNC.org. It's the NPR for Northern Colorado. So right off the bat, there's a little bit of bias, but nonetheless, interesting article. November 29th, 2023, Northern Colorado residents file lawsuits after false DUI arrests. So, of course, a DUI is a horrible thing for anybody if that happens to them. A false DUI arrest, I can imagine, is only even worse. Data from the Colorado Department of Transportation reveals that between 2020 and 2022, a total of 30 people were killed on Colorado roads. 1/3 of those incidents involved suspected impaired drivers. The charges of driving under the influence carry heavy penalties in Colorado, but recent lawsuits argue that false DUI arrests also have big consequences. The issue has become significant in Fort Collins, where several residents filed lawsuits over the past 3 years stating they were wrongfully accused of driving while intoxicated. KUNC host Mike Lyle spoke with the Coloradan reporter Sadie Swanson to learn more about how law enforcement in Fort Collins plans to address this issue. Swanson said one resident, Harris Elias, was wrongly arrested for DUI charges in 2020 and 2021. Both of those charges were later dropped after an investigation found that Elias was not under the influence. Wow. I mean, absolutely frightening. I can't even imagine you're in that situation where, you're not drunk, you're not impaired, and you get pulled over. They they say you are for one reason or another. So check that article out. There's a lot of information there. You can listen to the 4-minute long interview between the KUNC reporter, but absolutely frightening. Just another reason why there's this idea of innocent until proven guilty in our American justice system, why that is so valuable, because, police make mistakes. We've all seen that happen. They're only human. So something just to be aware of, something worth talking about for sure. Let's go ahead and move on to the Fort Morgan Times. Interesting article here, fortmorganstimes.com. You know the names of Colorado's biggest corporations. Here's what they received in tax incentives from the state. The Job Growth Incentive Tax Credit Program has helped create thousands of high-paying jobs, but most are on the Front Range and may have exacerbated housing costs. So, of course, if you hear tax credit, you might know that means you might get money back. It's not just a tax rebate or a tax, way for you to pay less taxes. You can actually get money back on your taxes. So some of these big companies are actually getting taxpayer subsidies. Let's take a look here. Originally from the Denver Post, last updated November 22nd, 2023. We'll zoom in here, make this a little larger for you. DeVita, Aero Electronics, Charter Communications, VF Corp, and Gusto are major employers in Colorado. And while they operate in very different industries, they share something in common. They either relocated to the state or boosted hiring after receiving assistance from Job Growth Incentive Tax Credit Program. which the General Assembly approved in response to the Great Recession, which cost the state 137,600 jobs in 2008 and 2009. From the first award in 2009 through this summer, employers have contracted to provide up to 48,000 jobs in return for up to $788.4 million worth of state tax breaks. So far, those 169 awards have generated $242 million worth of state tax credits tied to the creation of 21,000 jobs, according to a Denver Post analysis of numbers provided by the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. From the state's perspective, the direct positive fiscal impact comes from job creation from workers paying state sales tax and state income tax, said Jeff Kraft, Director of Business Funding and Incentives at OEDIT. In return for each job created, the state provides employers a credit against corporate income taxes tied to half of the payroll taxes generated. The program has made a big difference in attracting companies more focused on hiring than making big capital investments, which the state's once dominant incentive, the Enterprise Zone Program, emphasizes, with several of the companies recruited now fixtures in the economy. However, the businesses associated with the JGITC have mostly set up shop along the Front Range, and the influx of higher wage workers may have exacerbated the sharp rise in housing costs, something the state is trying to remedy so it can remain competitive. The first mega deal that the JGITC helped bring to the state in 2009 was DaVita, a kidney dialysis company that relocated from El Segundo, California. The company has established a large presence in the Central Platte Valley, while also drawing its share of controversy over the years. Now, part of the reason why there's some controversy, just to not segue too much, but Kent Theory. So Kent Theory is one of the big CEO here. Not only getting some criminal investigations or civil investigations, but also wanting to play pretty heavily in Colorado politics, influencing our electoral system, spending big money that he might be getting from taxpayers to try and control our political systems, excuse me. DaVita was awarded $5.3 million in state tax credits in 2009 in return for bringing 500 jobs to the state, a promise it delivered on. The company came back in 2014, winning approval for another $3 million, tied to the addition of 215 jobs, of which 94 have been added and $918,000 in tax credits claimed. Applied again in 2015, winning an award of $12.7 million tied to the addition of 800 jobs. The company reported adding only 438 of those jobs and has claimed $6.1 million of that award. So the article goes on into some of these companies getting so much money from the taxpayers from our state government. You know, I, of course, am pro-business, pro-capitalism, but this isn't capitalism. This is with the government picking winners and losers, maybe giving politically connected companies a leg up and an advantage over their competitors. These tax credit schemes are corporate welfare, and it's not fair for the mom and pop shops and entrepreneurs who don't have access to these resources, who want to compete. So you can definitely take a look at this and read this article, gains a little bit more information about it. Taxes are too high, of course, but nonetheless, uh, these incentive programs are not necessarily free market. They are not free market capitalism, and they do have a cost to our free market and to the business climate. So check that out. Of course, all these links are at freestatecolorado.com. Go ahead and move on here. From ammoland.com, great pro-gun website, November 21st, 2023. Federal judge's waiting period decision, a rocky road for Colorado's gun rights. Now, I've covered this before. Very unfortunate that this judge does not believe in the right to keep and bear arms. They're trying to prevent people from purchasing a firearm. People who are legally able to purchase a firearm from getting it within the time they want, they're making them wait 3 days. And a right delayed is a right denied for sure. In a move that's ruffled feathers in the gun rights community, U.S. District Judge John L. Kane, who was appointed during the Carter era, it's been there a long time, upheld Colorado's contentious 3-day waiting period for gun sales last Monday. The judge denied a request by gun rights advocates to have Colorado's 3-day waiting period law for gun sales enjoined. The ruling, a setback for gun rights advocates, has sparked heated debate across the state and beyond. The judge's decision hinges on a nuanced interpretation of the Second Amendment, challenging long held views about gun ownership and acquisition rights. Judge Keene's ruling in RMGO v. Polis draws a crooked line, declaring that the right to keep and bear arms, as enshrined in the Second Amendment, does not extend to the right to acquire guns through commercial sales. This interpretation, grounded in the language of the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court's analysis in Heller, argues that the waiting period required by the Act falls outside the scope of the amendment. However, this perspective has not sat well with gun rights supporters who view it as a narrowing of their constitutional liberties. The implications of this ruling are far-reaching. Coloradans keen on purchasing firearms continue to face inevitable delays in the process, regardless of their ability to pass an immediate background check. Moreover, this legal stance could open doors to further restrictions on gun sales, a possibility that has gun rights groups on high alert. In response to the ruling, the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, RMGO, a plaintiff in the case, described the decision as a bump in the road, urging their supporters not to lose faith. Taylor Rhodes, the executive director of RMGO, announced plans to appeal the decision to the 10th Circuit panel, a forum where they previously found success. This determination to fight bad case law showcases the resilience and resolve that gun rights advocates need in the face of legal decisions. You can read his tweet there. So, of course, an interesting article, interesting thing that's going on. Colorado is definitely at the front lines of our gun rights battle across the entire country. Support RMGO if you're not already. And, grow the gun rights community, I think is very important as well. If you know somebody who maybe doesn't know how to use a firearm or is unfamiliar, get them out to the range, teach them how to safely interact with a gun to shoot it, and let's make them part of the gun rights community. All right, let's move on. CBSnews.com, CBS Colorado, November 23rd, 2023. Employee fired for refusing COVID-19 vaccination sues Colorado company. Well, good. I hope they win. The whole forced vaccinations, the forced COVID injections during the whole 2020 era is one of the biggest stains on American liberty and our freedom as a country. A project manager who was fired by Newmont Mining Corporation when he missed a deadline for getting a COVID-19 vaccination has filed a lawsuit against it for religious discrimination. Tavis Rogers, 56, had been on the job 7 months when Newmont's management issued a vaccination requirement in November 2021, giving all employees 2 months to receive the shot. Rogers, according to the lawsuit documents, notified the company immediately of his conflict with the order. I am a Christian. Complying with this mandate would definitely burden my religious exercise because in my faith, my body does not belong to me, Rogers answered to the company's questionnaire. I do not make the choices for my body. My Heavenly Father made those choices for me through His Word. If you are mandating to me what to place into His temple, then you are burdening my religious freedom by taking the choice of what goes into my body away from God. Rogers, according to the lawsuit, asked that he be allowed to continue working remotely instead of getting a vaccination. Newmont hired Rogers, a 56-year-old licensed engineer, as its water treatment plant project director at a $155,000 base salary. He was assigned to work on a Yanacocha mine in Peru, per the lawsuit. Rogers' prior experience included several mines and water projects in Colorado and Peru, according to his social media profile. LinkedIn. The company's human resources department continued to ask Rogers questions leading up to the January 1st, 2022 vaccination deadline. But Rogers, according to the lawsuit, considered Newmont's inquiry into his previous vaccination history to be improperly intrusive. The Lord Jesus Christ has been extremely clear and consistent in all of his responses to me that he has provided me with an immune system that he himself designed, Rogers answered in writing. He does not want my body, his temple, to be injected with any medical substances that potentially modify his design. Further, the substances in these vaccines are possibly harmful to the body, and the extent of that harm is unknown. As a courtesy, Rogers continued, if you would like to have a better understanding of my faith and religious leader, Jesus Christ, I can provide you a copy of the Holy Bible. The deadline passed. Newmont's HR protested a week later. The objective facts and circumstances, including your own statements and actions, indicate that you have decided not to get the COVID-19 vaccine based on your objection to vaccination, your personal choice preference, and concerns about the vaccine's possible side effects, the company stated per the lawsuit. Your position requires travel to Peru, and vaccination is required for travel and to travel to the work locations in Peru. As you know, we are in the midst of a global pandemic, and vaccination is a critical health and safety tool to protect the health of Newmont's workforce in the communities in which we work and live. In return, Rogers wrote, God created me with an immune system, and I cannot alter his design. Newmont, which is headquartered in Denver, terminated Rogers at the end of that January. So let's hope he goes through. I hope the lawsuit goes through. February 2024 looks like the first court appearance. Of course, it was totally and utterly wrong, immoral, and unethical for any business, any person to try and force an injection on somebody who does not want it, regardless of the circumstances. But let's go ahead and move on. From John Caldara of the Independence Institute, a ColoradoPolitics.com opinion piece. Polis, Colorado Dems refuse to rein in petulant alt-left reps. From November 26th, 2023. Updated December 2nd. Yep, the Colorado Republican Party can be completely dysfunctional and embarrassing. It has elements many call ultra right wing or alt right. And you shouldn't care because it just doesn't matter. There is no bigger non story in Colorado than Republican infighting. How could there be? They have no political relevance, none. They are the super minority. Democrats control the state's executive branch of government, the judicial branch, and boy howdy, do they control the state legislature. There is only one real story in town, and it's getting harder and harder to keep it suppressed. It's the growing civil war inside the alt left that run our state. The rumors of complete embarrassment and behind closed doors dysfunction in the Colorado Democratic Party are already legendary. But now, the dysfunction is spilling out for all to see. With at least 6 members of the Democratic Socialists for America among their ranks and many more sympathizers in the legislature to mention, there seems to be a new breed of Stalinist-styled viciousness echoing through the halls of the state capitol. Like MAGA supporters wearing buffalo horns and ransacking Nancy Pelosi's office, these folks just can't contain themselves. But the slight little difference here is these protesters are also our lawmakers. Just in time for an awkward family Thanksgiving dinners, they treated us to a legislative special session supposedly regarding property tax relief. But they turned it into a clown show, followed by a socialist-styled redistribution of our TABOR refunds. There's been incredible pressure from the media, academia, Hollywood, and the political elite on conservatives of all stripes to condemn the ultra-white, right-wing MAGA crowd who claimed Trump's election was stolen. That is, we're supposed to call out fellow conservatives for behaving badly. How odd, then, that when liberals and progressive watch their team behave badly, there's little pressure for them to do the same. For a fun starting point, do a Google search of terms. Search terms like ultra-right Republican, and you'll have at least 3 to 4 times as many hits as ultra-left Democrat. Same if you search alt-right versus alt-left. Try and ingest the news section too. It seems those pillars of culture, media, academia, Hollywood, are pretty breezy about labeling people on the right as extreme, but apparently there's very few extremists on the left. Does anyone else find that odd? How is freshman state representative Tim Hernandez not labeled ultra-left? The desks in the State House chamber have the Colorado and American flags on them. Makes sense, given our state reps have taken an oath both to Colorado and U.S. constitutions. Hernandez ripped his American flag down and put a Palestinian flag in its place. This is the same guy who refused to condemn the Hamas attacks on Israel. Isn't State Rep Elisabeth Epps alt-left? She took to the House floor to go on a 45-minute anti-Semitic tirade about genocide in Gaza during a discussion about, what else? Food stamps. The fun didn't stop there, as Epps then took to the gallery to join fellow Palestinian protesters. When one of her Jewish colleagues took to the House floor and said something she didn't like, she screamed from the balcony he was out of order. So often the speaker called the House to recess to have her removed. Yes, anecdotal stuff, but we see it played out in governments all across Colorado, like Denver City Council and school boards. The overriding theme is that Democratic adults in Colorado refuse to rein in their ultra left wing children. The largest case in point is, of course, Governor Jared Polis, who made it very clear during the Proposition HH campaign he did not want to see TABOR refunds used for income redistribution. Socialism. On the televised debate, he said, rather than keep redistributing more and more money, let's just cut taxes, period. Yet the bills now sent to him only redistribute TABOR refunds from those who paid more in taxes to those who paid much less, if not nothing at all, in taxes. If true to his words, Polis must veto those bills. But in 5 years, if Governor Polis have proven anything, it is that he cannot stand up to the vicious alt-left of his party, many of whom are now making it clear they're not fond of Jews like him. Wow. So John Caldara, piece there, talking about how far left some of these Democrats have gone. So interesting to see how that civil war within the Democratic Party will continue to play out into the 2024 legislature and 2024 election. But let's go ahead and move on here. Speaking of the 2024 legislative session, here's an article from the lobby-co.com. Colorado to ban fatphobia to prevent workplace and housing discrimination. Yikes, November 28th. Colorado lawmakers will attempt to stomp out hate and discrimination during the next legislation. Democrats wanting to pass a law to prevent fatphobia in housing and employment. In a move to promote so-called fat acceptance, a proposed new law would ban fatphobia and prohibit employers and landlords from discriminating against individuals based on their weight. The legislation, expected to pass in 2024 with the Democrat majorities in both chambers, aims to prevent landlords from denying rentals based on weight limits and implement often expensive workplace accommodations for those who are overweight. This comes on the heels of similar laws passing in major cities like New York, where obesity rates continue to rise. Other states like Massachusetts, Vermont, New Jersey are also considering similar measures. While some may argue that these laws are necessary to protect the rights of overweight individuals, other Coloradans question the need for such legislation. Of course, it is absolutely and totally ridiculous to see what they're going to push forward about preventing weight discrimination in housing and workplace. So stupid, so ridiculous. Colorado is experiencing a wave of violent crime. Taxes are skyrocketing. The cost of living is absolutely outrageous. And our state legislature does not care about the average person who's just struggling to pay their bills and feed their family. Instead, they're pushing ridiculous ideas, wasting taxpayer money and time. So we'll continue to see how that plays out next year. Let's go ahead and move on. Also about 2024, this is in Denver, denverite.com. Denverites will vote in 2024 on prohibiting the sale of fur and closing slaughterhouses in the city. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. This total pro-animal agenda is in many ways anti-human. We're human beings, we're people. If we want to buy fur, if we want to sell animal products, if we want to have a slaughterhouse so we can eat meat, slaughterhouses are required for meat processing. I mean, come on. This is just another attack on meat, on the animal industry. This idea that human beings have no right to animals is absolutely ridiculous. This article is from November 28th, 2023. One measure, led by the animal rights group Pro Animal Future, would prohibit selling and manufacturing new fur in Denver. The potential law would go into effect in 2025 and give exemptions for secondhand fur and indigenous fur trading. Boulder passed a similar measure in 2021. It only aims to target the continued factory farming and trapping of animals for luxury fashion sales, wrote Pro Animal Future spokesperson Phoenix Huber in a statement last week. It's unclear how many shops in Denver the ban might affect. Denverite has reached out for comment to Overland Sheepskin Company, a sheepskin and leather company with a shop in Denver, named by Pro Animal Future in a press release. The other measure would ban slaughterhouses in the city starting in 2026, including Superior Farms Incorporated, a large lamb processor that has faced protest from Pro Animal Future in the past. The slaughterhouse is a source of pollution in Globeville, an area of Denver already overwhelmed with industrial contamination, Huber said. Many people we spoke with while petitioning felt that Denver has grown too much to have an industrial-scale slaughterhouse killing 500,000 sheep every year. The measure would also require the city to help slaughterhouse workers with workforce training and employment assistance programs. It's unclear how many employees the ordinance might affect if approved. Superior Farms spokesperson Roger Sherman said the ban would have a big impact on the region. Superior Farms is owned and operated by its employees and has been a part of the local community for more than 70 years, providing jobs and contributing to our local food economy, he said. Forcing it to shut down would put 170 workers with good wages and benefits out of their jobs. This measure is unfair and simply the wrong approach. The measures received more than 31,000 signatures to get them onto next year's ballot and received sufficiency status from Denver elections on November 27th. So there we go. We're seeing this pro animal future, this anti human agenda continue to play out. Of course, if they could ban the sale of meat, they would definitely do so. So vote against these if you are in Denver. If people want to have fur, they should be able to. If people want to eat meat, they should be able to as well. We saw last week on the weekly, or last previous episode on the weekly roundup, that this slaughterhouse here in Denver provides a large amount of lamb. Colorado is one of the largest producers of lamb in the entire country. So to shut this down is a total slap in the face to our agriculture industry. Let's move on here. Talking about the special session one last time, maybe, is this from the Independence Institute? Ben Murray catches Elisabeth Epps saying the quiet part out loud. Let's go ahead and give it a listen. So, of course, that was very telling, very interesting. You see Krista Gray Kennedy up here, who's the acting speaker in this moment of the committee hearing, flip out the fact, he was one of the authors, one of the people behind Proposition HH, one of the big people behind Senate Bill 1, which did end up passing, kind of repackaging some of these property tax adjustments. Minor, not very happy with what Rep. Epps said about the fact that Proposition HH was absolutely dismissed by the voters of Colorado through direct democracy. And unfortunately, the state legislature did what they could to override the will of the voters, and it's shameful. So, of course, Chris Kennedy, DeGray Kennedy, and others are going to flip out over that because it's basically showing the total utter contempt and disregard that these legislators have for the people of Colorado. So very interesting. Thanks, Ben Murray, for getting that clip up. And yeah, there you go, Colorado. Moving on to Complete Colorado, page 2. Of course, CompleteColorado.com is a website you should be checking every day, at least once or twice, giving you some of the top headlines and articles from across the state from a more liberty perspective. Some of the original reporting they do is also fantastic. This is from November 20th, 2023 by Corey Gaines. Regular Coloradans getting shut out of legislative process. Let's see what he has to say. One of the many things that makes Colorado unique and a wonderful place to live are all the opportunities our state constitution affords for people to be directly involved in the making of laws. If you have some extra time and a thirst for some light reading, go look up the Colorado Constitution, Article 5, Section 1. Note how much text is given over to the rights of the people in making laws versus that of legislators. As part of running my own Substack newsletter, I frequently encourage people to get involved with their government, the legislative process especially. I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm conservative, though registered as unaffiliated after switching over from libertarian, and want more conservative voices speaking up in blue Colorado. But I do sincerely wish everyone of every political bent to get involved. The more voices we have in this state, the better, in my view. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that we, the ordinary people of this state, are losing our right to be involved. We're not losing it by any overt act per se, but rather we are losing it effectively by scheduling, something readily apparent since the passage of the legislation earlier this year that enabled Proposition HH in the current special legislative session. I have always been a believer in practicing what you preach, and thus I do try my best to be politically involved. I write emails and I speak up at committee hearings. Having a full-time job and a family means I can't do as much of this as I'd like, but I pick a few bills or issues and focus my time there. What I am finding more and more, however, is that the people that are speaking up are those that I would call the professional political class. If you've ever heard a Colorado policymaker discuss stakeholders, that's one group. Oh, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you, despite paying for a lot of this stuff, are not what lawmakers consider a stakeholder. You'll also hear local governments, business associations, trade associations, and the like. I also hear quite often from advocates, people whose job it is to testify at these things. Oh, and let's not forget the lobbyists. What I don't hear are people like myself, ordinary Coloradans who foot the bills and live with the laws. Let's stop here and take a quick second to remind ourselves that we bear some of this responsibility. You should be speaking up, and if you're not, I encourage you to start now. If you're stuck on good, feasible ways to do so, watch my newsletter or contact me through same. All the same, a good chunk of the reason why the professional political class are the only ones at these hearings is that it's their job. They have the kind of time to devote to research bills and rules, then quickly turn around and attend the meetings where the measures are debated. A quick change in hearing times or a sped up schedule is no problem, at least for them. This is especially notable with the hurried special session the legislators started last week. Despite, as Senate President Steve Fenberg noted in a recent article, some of the draft bills being put out publicly before the session, and despite my best efforts, I could not make the timing work to testify on the single bill I wanted to speak about. I signed up the morning of the start of the special session to testify, and by the time I got the ball rolling, I was told the bill had been sent to the Senate for a vote. I doubt this would have been different with a different bill. On top of that, I want you to think back to when the bill created Proposition HH was passed. Even some dedicated advocates who have more time than I do were caught flat footed with the bill being in and out of committee faster than a silver bullet stuck in the butt of a bat out of hell. Given this, how in the world is an ordinary person supposed to get involved here? What about someone who's older and who might struggle with the technology to do remote testimony and getting set up to testify? What about someone who has commitments sufficiently that they don't have time to review draft bills, even with a day's notice? What about someone struggling to keep up with the rapid changes as the bill moves from place to place? So, of course, I think Corey Gaines brings up some great points. It's very true that it is very difficult for citizens to participate in the legislative process. Free State Colorado, also big goal that I have is to help make it easier for people to testify, to have an influence or have a voice in our local communities, especially at the state legislature. So, but Gaines brings up a point that cannot be avoided, and that is our state legislative leadership is not helping the people of Colorado interact or have a voice in our state government. That is a problem, and it does need to be remedied. So thank you, Corey, for that article, and let's go ahead and continue on. So, of course, we just talked about the special session. Property taxes, of course, were the big piece of that. So, big question is how much are property taxes going to increase? We've seen numbers of anywhere from 24% to 30% to even 40% in some areas. These evaluations, these assessed values have increased dramatically. The assessment rate has not been reduced significantly. And of course, new mill levies that have been added across the state are going to increase that burden even higher. So what is it going to look like next year? Well, Coloradans won't know how much their property taxes will increase until at least January 17th. This is from 9news.com. The state legislature pushed several deadlines back thanks to the special session, which was meant to focus on property tax solutions. This is from Marshall Zellinger, somebody I don't agree with very often, November 28th, 2023. Let's zoom in here a little bit. The special session to reduce next year's increase in your property tax bill ended more than a week ago. Yet, property owners still cannot estimate how much their property tax bill might be next year. For that matter, local governments haven't figured out the math yet either. Many of those local governments are asking that very question. How do we find out what the numbers are going to be? Ann Terry, executive director of the Colorado Special District Association, said, Terry knows the upcoming deadlines better than most. Several dates at the start of the new year will reveal the numbers needed to complete the property tax math equation. We're hoping that by January 17th that you would be able to know what your tax commitment would be to your county or to your special district or to your school districts, Terry said. Several deadlines were pushed back by the legislature in the special session. I was encouraged, Terry said. The governor said that they are having DOLA, the Department of Local Affairs, create a toolkit for local governments so that they will be able to figure this all out. Normally, county assessors would have needed to certify the final valuation of all county property by December 10th. That deadline was pushed back to January 3rd. So they got to get these values in. The taxing districts have to tell the Department of Local Affairs, the county tax departments, everybody, how much they're going to be setting those mill levy rates at, how much property taxes are going to be due next year. So this is going to be something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. Definitely something I'll be talking about a lot. These politicians have failed at the legislature to provide meaningful property tax relief, and they need to be held accountable. Let's move on. So, of course, Jared Polis admitted this week that his special session did fail. So, an article here from November 30th, updated December 1st from ColoradoPolitics.com. Tension grows as Polis asks local governments to reduce property tax levy. So, the governor failed in his special session goal to lower property taxes. So, now he's putting the burden on local governments. Mere days after signing legislation that provides some respite from soaring property taxes, Governor Jared Polis went on the offensive, calling on local governments to reduce their mill levies to offer more relief to homeowners. In a letter to local governments on Thursday, the governor effectively said the property tax relief adopted in the special session is insufficient. Now it's up to you, local elected leaders, to do more, which is why I'm urging you to reduce the tax rate mill levy in your district, he said. Current and former officials who have been dealing with property tax issues for years appeared annoyed by the governor's message. Some noted that taxing jurisdictions, in fact, have had that ability for years, effectively saying Polis's suggestion that they tackle the crisis is not helpful. Others said local governments, in fact, have responded. Several have already reduced mill levies or are seriously considering plans to. Experts also noted that taxing jurisdictions face intense pressure to implement the provisions of the Democrat backed property tax legislation, which created a new set of complications. Some, such as Representative Lisa Frizzell, a Republican who served as Douglas County assessor for 8 years, said the governor's suggestion is outrageous, particularly in light of the growth of state government over the past several years. He has bloated state government and the budget beyond recognition, but is now telling local governments to tighten their belts, she said. Frizzell noted a recent decision by the Legislative Council Committee to approve bills for 2024 that carry a price tag of $2 billion, even when a recent budget forecast said lawmakers only have about $23 million to spend on new programs. Wow. Democrats are looking at new programs but are not willing to give meaningful tax relief, Frizzell said. The property tax relief that came out of the special session isn't real relief because the increases in taxes are so great that minuscule reduction in the assessment rate will not significantly help, she said. So there you go. You can take a look and move on there. But of course, some of these local governments have reached out to Governor Polis and told him they are not going to be able to reduce the mill levies just because of their specific financial circumstances. So Polis is looking a little bit more and more like a clown these days, of course, because he has failed to do what he set out to do. And this problem's been going on for a long time. Now we're getting into crunch time as the bills are going to come out next year. That's property tax bills come out next year, and some Colorado homeowners might be shocked at what they see. We will see what happens. Moving on. Here's what Colorado Springs is doing about their property taxes. This is KRDO.com. Colorado Springs is expecting to cap 2024 local property tax rate. This is from December 1st, 2023. After Governor Jared Polis called a special session last month aimed at addressing property tax increases, city leaders in Colorado Springs got to work trying to figure out how they will bring relief to their portion of your tax bill. Where we are reacting to what the state government did and what the legislator did too, to just ensure the city collects essentially very close to what they collected last year, said Councilmember Dave Donaldson, District 1. To do that, the city plans to enact an adjustment to your mill levy rates. The equations used to assess mill levy rates can be complicated, but in a nutshell, city leaders are looking to lower them by 0.7 mils, which would provide more than $6 million worth of property tax relief across the city. But Donaldson said he does not think it's relief, but instead a way for the city to not over-collect. The zero point 0.7 mils credit isn't tax relief. It simply reduces the amount that we collect to what we are allowed to keep, according to the law, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. Otherwise, we would have to refund it, said Donaldson. The mayor said Colorado Springs City Council is expected to give its final approval to the measure in 2 weeks. So great to see Colorado Springs stepping up. Of course, many other local governments have already done so, but people, you have time to reach out to your local special districts, your school district, your city council, your county commissioners, and tell them to lower your property taxes because they really can. They're going to be collecting more than they've ever collected before, and that's why they need to get to work reducing those mill levy rates. Let's go ahead and move on here. So, big question, of course, is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and those refund checks that we get nearly every year, at least in recent years. So, of course, we've seen the state legislature play games with TABOR. It's part of the Democratic Party's platform here in Colorado to eliminate the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, to take away our right to vote on tax increases and to prevent the government from oversized growth. This is KDVR.com. November 23rd, 2023. How much will the next TABOR check be? Zoom in here. One outcome of Colorado's special legislative session, taxpayers will get equal TABOR checks in the next round of refunds. Colorado lawmakers were called into session to deal with property tax relief after voters soundly rejected Proposition HH. The measure would have raised the state's revenue cap in exchange for a property tax break, and it would have given taxpayers a one-time equal refund under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and potentially eliminated the refunds in the future. That's right, our governor and our state legislature wanted to eliminate our Taxpayer Bill of Rights refunds so they can keep that money for themselves, money that we earned. Instead, lawmakers took up these issues individually, passing property tax relief, yeah, right, and approving equal TABOR refunds for Coloradans. So, how much is Colorado's TABOR refund in 2024? Well, TABOR puts a cap on how much tax revenue the state can take in and requires the surplus to be refunded to taxpayers. Historically, TABOR checks have been issued based on income levels, meaning that if you pay more taxes, you get more money back. It's only fair. But lawmakers have once again decided to make these payments equal across the board. That means higher earners will see lower TABOR refunds than expected, while the state's lowest earners will see a few $100s more. For the next round of refunds, it's estimated that some $3.2 billion will be returned to Colorado taxpayers, according to a fiscal note on the bill. Split equally, the next TABOR checks would be an estimated $847 for single filers and $16.94 for those who filed jointly. So there we go. However, lawmakers also passed a bill to expand the earned income tax credit, which lowers the amount paid in TABOR refunds to a projected $800. Now, you can read the rest of that article if you'd like, but just know that the special session is robbing everyone in Colorado of about $50 on their tax refund check next year. And of course, higher wage earners are losing a lot more than that. So thank you, Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Thank you, TABOR, for $847, that much needed money that working class Coloradans and everybody across Colorado is going to get next year. So whenever any politician demonizes TABOR, they try and take away the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, just look at your bank account and know that it'll be $847 less if they were successful. Those refunds are expected to grow in the future. Let's go ahead and move on here. Excuse me. All right, let's just one last article here to talk about for 2024. ColoradoPolitics.com, Ernest Lunning, December 2nd, 2023. 12 races to watch as Colorado heads into 2024 presidential election year. Now, I'm not going to go through this article in depth, but of course, we'll just highlight some of the big events, some of the timelines of what we're looking at next year. So fewer than 100 days remaining until Colorado's Super Tuesday presidential primary and statewide precinct caucuses to kick off the 2024 election year. The key races will dominate the ballot and vie for voters' attention are taking shape. Coloradans will have the opportunity to cast votes 3 times through the year. First, in the March 5th presidential primary, then in the June 25th state level primary, and finally in the November 5th general election. Of course, presidential election in 2024 is huge. Two contests on the statewide ballot next year for the presidency and an at-large seat on the University Colorado Board of Regents. So that is very interesting to see. So Super Tuesday, ballots will be due March 5th, 2024. Ballots go out February 12th, 2024. Deadline to certify the ballot to have it prepared is January 5th, 2024. So, of course, the Republican presidential primary is big there. We'll see what happens. The June primary election, ballots due June 25th, 2024. So that, let's see here. So the 4th Congressional District Republican primary, that is a big one. Who's going to be replacing Ken Buck, this outgoing congressman in one of the most conservative districts in the United States? So right now we have State Representative Richard Holtor from Akron, Deborah Flora, Webb County Councilor Trent Lazy, and Justin Schreiber involved declared candidacies. We might also see House Minority Leader Mike Lynch from Wellington, Morgan County Commissioner Jerry Sonnenberg, former Fort Collins City Council member Gino Campana, former State Senator Rob Woodward, R. of Loveland, former CU Regent Heidi Ganal, and Floyd Trujillo have all indicated interest in the primary. So that will be very, very interesting. Just so you know how strongly Republican this district is, Ken Buck, a year ago in 2022, won with 61% of the vote. Wow. So whoever the Republican nominee is almost guaranteed to be the next congressperson from Colorado. Denver District Attorney primary, Democratic primary, Beth McCann, a horrible, horrible district attorney, in my opinion, for her prosecution of cannabis dispensary workers many years ago, will be out in a very, of course, Democratic stronghold, of course. So who will replace her will be very interesting. Of course, we got Mr. Tim Hernandez here. If the state legislature does not kick him out, he might face a Democratic primary for a lot of his bad comments he's made. So that's a very strong Democratic district, of course. But we'll see if the more central Democrats go after him in that election. Very interesting. Of course, the November general election. Of course, Lauren Boebert, a big one there. We're going to see millions and millions of dollars being spent to defeat her or support her. So we'll see what happens in Congressional District 3. Congressional District 8 with kind of a disappointing Yadira Caraveo, Thornton Democrat, hasn't really done too much except been a rubber stamp for Biden's policies. So we'll see. She barely won with 48.38% of the vote to Barb Kirkmeyer's 47.69% of the vote. So we'll see there the University of Colorado Regent at large. Big statewide race there. State Senate District 12. This is a very close one. We've seen, obviously, there's been some redistricting since the previous election, but of course, Colorado Politics articles wondering whether El Paso County's recent shift away from the decades-long GOP dominance will continue. So very interesting there. State House District 19. State Representative Jennifer Lee Parenti, D of Longmont, the incumbent and former state rep Dan Woog, Republican of Erie. So this is one of the key races where Republicans need to win in order to take back or gain some more, gain some seats in the state legislature and the state house, restore some balance and hopefully some sanity. Some big abortion ballot measures. Unfortunately, there's a ballot measure to eliminate the constitutional restriction on state funding, on taxpayer funding of abortions. That's going to be on the ballot. So we'll see what happens with that. And of course, some property tax ballot measures that we'll see talked about plenty of other times. Here's that Kent theory talked about earlier, this DeVita, multimillionaire, billionaire guy, about his ballot measures to totally rewrite Colorado's election system. So this guy's getting, his big company is getting subsidized by state taxpayers, getting millions and millions of dollars. And of course, he's using some of that money for his own political schemes. Absolutely and utterly wrong, in my opinion. But nonetheless, check out that article. Of course, all these links are at freestatecolorado.com. We're talking a lot about the election going into 2024, of course, and what's happening in the legislature. So Let's talk about one last thing this week. Colorado's premier Liberty meetup, Liberty on the Rocks Denver, my coffee mug that you might see from time to time here. A great event happening Wednesday, December 6th, 2023 at the Independence Institute. Doors open at 6, event starts at 7. The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire with Charlie Robinson. This is one you do not want to miss. It is the last Denver Liberty on the Rocks of the year. It's going to be a really good event. Charlie Robinson has his own Macroaggressions podcast, is an author, and a very interesting person. You're going to want to hear what he has to say. So check it out. All empires fall, but it is the reason they eventually come apart that is surprisingly similar. The fate of America will not be any different. So come check it out, see what's going on. This is a great way for you to meet other people in the Liberty community, to grow your network, and support a great event. It's a free event with free parking at the Independence Institute, Wednesday, December 6th. Hope to see you there. Well, thank you guys very much for joining me. Really appreciate your time. Uh, it's a lot of work to do going into 2024. It's pretty exciting. There's big plans for Free State Colorado, so hope you join me on that journey. Thank you.